All right, that's the third interview today for Green Healing Show. I have Avery Thatcher today. She's a life coach, hypnosis, and we're gonna talk about a great stuff. We're gonna talk about
Mhm.
how to unlock your productivity potential without burning out. And here we are in transition channel. If you want to join and follow our interviews, go to the channel, or you can follow us in different podcast platform, Apple Podcasts and others. And if you have any question, please join us and ask your own questions. Welcome to my show, Avery. I'm so happy to have you. You have a lot of skills here. Oh gosh, let me see. And you are also a nurse. You've been a nurse before, so you are
Mhm.
in health genre, and you are complex trauma coach. We also have another show with PTSD. So we talk about
Mm.
PTSD, mental health as well. There. So tell me about your story. How did you start your online coaching, and why did you do that? And tell me about your background.
Absolutely. So I started off my career as a registered nurse working in the ICU, and I noticed that the majority of the reasons why adults found themselves in the ICU were because of illnesses and diseases that could be linked to chronic stress. So I decided to get out of the reactive side of medicine, and now I help people prevent burnout and reverse the negative health effects of stress.
Did you have issues as well for the chronic stress, or you just had these case studies in your own patient?
Oh, I absolutely had a lot of stress for sure. Working in an environment like that is very stressful, and you do
Definitely.
need to make sure that you're staying on top of your own stress management. And then myself, I identify as being a highly sensitive person, so I have a lot of emotions, and they show up very deeply. And in a world that is very adverse to feeling their emotions, wanting to push them down and just push through, I definitely had a lot of struggles with coming to balance with that, and that caused a lot of stress for me as well.
You talk about emergency room, right? My mom is a retired nurse. I've been in there forever when she worked there, actually,
Mhm.
all my childhood. And she was a supervisor, going from one ward to another one. Every day on your lunch, she talked about whatever happened there, and unfortunately, bad things. And
Mhm.
you just imagine my poor dad should listen to what she's saying about all the stress, all the emergencies, whatever happened in the region. We were the first people to hear about it because my mom was there working, right? We were very close to
Mhm.
the mountain, and something happened in the mountain. Somebody fell down, or something bad happened. We know in the beginning what's happening. I understand the situation because I've been there. I didn't work there,
Mhm.
but I could see somebody as a very close family to me, that what's gonna happen in your life, because my mom could really control her stress, and she was really good calming down, right? Whatever bad happens, worst thing happens, even her sister died, right? I didn't understand what's happened because she could control herself. Even if she break down inside, she controlled herself. So I
Mhm.
know this kind of work, like emergency work, is a great serving for other people, but immediate relatives should be aware of it. And I always talk about this in my PTSD show. Tell me about the effect of this working first, and how we can't avoid it, but how can we um, help or loved ones if they are in this situation.
Great question. So I feel like we often get stuck because we get this message that self care needs to be a 30-minute per day kind of thing. The yoga classes are all 90 minutes long. All of the things that we see as stress management all take up too much time when we are feeling really busy. So, one of the best things that I learned how to do when I was working full time 12-hour shift work was to look for pockets of time, because really 1 minute is better than no minute. So if I were to sit in a small, quiet room and really just slow down, calm my breathing, become aware of that, maybe even get into a bit of meditation for 3 minutes before I went back out to the floor to work, it helped. It helped all over the time. And looking for ways to incorporate things like yoga into 15-minute classes instead of 90-minute classes. So it's about really just being flexible and realizing the intention of the activity, not tying yourself to a particular amount of time.
Interesting thing you said, productivity. In my For my fertility coaching, I always recommend people that productivity means you actually activate a lot of part of your brain. Not only that one, reproductive functions also is gonna be activated when you do something productive, because you focus on something, and you dedicate your time there. You don't think about something else, and this is one of the great tool to for meditation, especially when something you are doing something you love, right?
Absolutely. And stress management is arguably one of the most important keys to unlocking your productivity potential, because when we're in this stressed out state, we lose access to our prefrontal cortex, our higher level thinking brain, the problem solving brain that can see solutions to difficult situations. And so, learning how to turn that stress switch off, like you said, your mother knew how to do, those skills are really essential for high achievers and high performers that want to know how to do more, because they need to know how to turn that stress switch off.
Yes. All right, tell me about your own solution for unlocking productivity potential. And you said without burning on. That's the important part, because as I see, some people try to take exercise when they are very, very tired. They are already burned out. They had a whole day of work, and then they go to take exercise. You know,
hmm
so the body getting more more tired. So because they think that they don't have time. I remember I used to live in Australia. In the morning, I started my day with the gym. So I started very,
hmm
very early. I had my breakfast there. So that was a good gym because they had breakfast. So I could have my breakfast and then go to work or my university. So what is your solution there?
So, for unlocking our productivity potential, there's actually four different keys that we have to play with and to be able to manage. And so, those are, the first one is clarity and alignment. The next one's energy management, then stress management, and then time management. Time management is actually the least important out of all of these, even though when we think of productivity, our first thought is how do I get more done in less time? But the truth is, we're actually asking the wrong question. And that's where these other keys can really play a huge role in unlocking that potential.
I like that point. I remember whenever I had exam, right? If I didn't study for the exam for like last 2 3 days before exam, I was like, oh, very stressed out, right? But when I was
hmm
ready in the beginning, I sit for studying. So I just realized if I get the lesson the same day, if I study the lesson the same day I get it, then I'm more prepared for the exam. I don't need to rush into it 2 3 days before exam. Or you gotta go and you have an interview, or you want to go to the work, and then you're gonna be very on time, but on the other hand you don't have any gap, so you try to do rush.
Yes.
This is but that's not working. You always should
Yes,
have gap to
exactly.
manage your time, right?
Yes, and that's really where the clarity and alignment piece, that first key of the productivity puzzle, really comes in. Because it's very easy for us to take on a lot of things, to say yes to too many things. But if we're really clear on what our purpose is, what we're working towards, then we can go through a series of questions to ask ourselves, should I say yes to this new thing? Or is it actually just going to be distracting me from what I'm truly working towards? And so when we think about being clear, number one, we've got to come up with a clarity statement. And so I do have ways that people can do that. But then also, we need to slow down when a new opportunity or a new idea or a new project comes our way. And this one thing that was taught to me that I really resonate with, and I use it all the time, is every time a new opportunity comes my way, I say to myself, no. And then I give myself 5 minutes. I set a timer and I give myself 5 minutes to convince myself it's a yes. And so I go through my series of questions and I look and I come back to my clarity statement. And if it's not going to further my purpose, then it's an easy no. But it's all about starting off with the no and trying to convince myself it's a yes. It's really helped me with my productivity.
How this productivity can help healing from complex trauma?
Great question. So, often in cases of complex trauma, our worth is tied into how much we can accomplish in a day, how much we can help somebody else. A lot of us come with these feelings of being not enough, not being worthy unless we're accomplishing something or making a difference for somebody else. So, a lot of healing that complex trauma comes into really disconnecting from the pre-programmed belief of what high achievement really means and tapping into a different perspective of that. Because everything changed for me when I redefined what high achievement meant to me. And when I bring people through this process, high achievement means different things to different people. Once you've disconnected from what your upbringing or what society has led you to believe. So for me, being a high achiever means that I'm having an impact of rippling compassion that affects people beyond my initial circle. So if I want to have this spreading of compassion and caring go beyond the people that I can actually look at, then I need to really take care of myself so I can have that wider impact. So really a lot of that is really redefining what high achievement actually means.
So, can you explain what complex trauma means? And I know EMDR also help complex trauma. Can you talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. So with complex trauma, when we think of trauma and we think of PTSD, the PTSD that we know of usually occurs after one specific or a couple of specific traumatic events. So we see this a lot in the military, we see this a lot in car accident survivors, we see it a lot in healthcare with people that have worked with particularly traumatizing instances. But complex trauma is where there's a lot of the same PTSD like symptoms. However, the flashbacks are more about emotions. They're more about feelings and fear rather than flashbacks of a particular instance in time. And so when we have these ongoing experiences of trauma and we start to really start internalizing that, that's where complex trauma shows up. So often this is more in the cases of emotional abuse, mental abuse, gaslighting, narcissistic abuse, those kinds of things over time. And then EMDR is really helpful in all kinds of trauma, both PTSD and CPTSD or complex PTSD. And so the practice of EMDR is where you go through certain exposure scenarios with somebody that's qualified or with your therapist or something like that. And you are moving your eyes back and forth. as you do this. And so that's giving yourself something to focus on a little bit while you disconnect from the trauma response in your body. And so as you're going back and forth, you are still able to process those emotions, but without triggering as strong a activation of the stress response.
All right. Tell me about CBD and DBT. What's the distinguish between them? I know they are very, very similar, but how can you distinguish them?
Great question. So, the way that I see CBT and DBT is DBT can prepare you for CBT because CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. It's kind of the gold standard of what modern psychology treatment is based on at this time. And it's really focusing on looking at the thought patterns and reworking them, rewriting them to serve you rather than sabotage you. But in order for people with trauma and complex trauma to go back and rewrite some of those beliefs, we have to first trust in our ability to do that. We have to trust in our ability and learn how to turn off our stress response. Because otherwise, when we're activated, when that stress response is turned on and we're either in hyper or hypoarousal, it's very difficult to do some of that higher level thinking work. Because, like I said, if you're in this stress response, you lose access to that prefrontal cortex, your higher level thinking brain, which makes sense because if you're running away from a bear or a lion or something like that, contemplating the meaning of life or solving that complex problem at work, it's not a priority. Getting away is. So that part of our brain actually gets shut off when our stress response is on. So what DBT does is it teaches you how to manage your stress switch so that way you can prepare yourself to do the deeper work.
Mhm. All right. Do you have any case studies about your work who help people to unlock their productivity? Did they have trauma? What kind of a style did you recommend them?
Great question. So, yes, I do have a number of different case studies. There's this one person that I worked with. His name, I call him Hugh. It's not his real name, but that's what we've decided his case study name would be. So, when I met Hugh, he was very much feeling like he was just along for the ride. He had no control over his life, no control over work. It was just like life was happening to him. He did have a history of complex trauma, a lot of emotional trauma in there. He also identified as a highly sensitive person and really did not feel like he got the support that he needed and didn't have a safe space to express those emotions. And so what we did is we worked through both like really all four of these productivity puzzle pieces. So we started off with clarity and alignment. We got into the identity goal setting of things to understand his purpose. And then we looked at stress management, again, going through those dialectical behavioral therapy, the DBT strategies to help build the self confidence. We did some other stress management strategies. And then that's where we dove into energy management, which, as you remember, is one of those other pieces that I talked about. Because when we think about energy management, it often comes back down to physical energy, because that's what we usually equate our energy by, is either we're exhausted and tired or we have energy to do whatever we need to do. But our energy is actually a lot more complex than that. We have four different energy spheres. And so physical energy is one of them, which is pretty much like what we already talked about. It's what we typically assign our energy levels by. There's also emotional energy. And so when we have a lot of emotional energy, we're able to maintain control of our emotions. We're able to experience the beauty and wonder of life and also the difficult pieces. When we don't have enough emotional energy, that's when we get really irritable. When we feel fatigued but not tired. We don't need a nap, but we just feel really run down emotionally. Then there's mental energy. And so mental energy allows us to make really good decisions. It allows us to have the clarity that we need. When we don't have a lot of mental energy, that's when we're in brain fog, when we do a lot of procrastination, because we just don't have the mental drive to be able to keep up with that. And then the last piece is the metaphysical energy. And with metaphysical energy, I just want people to think about it not necessarily as the woo woo out there kind of space, but more about your connection to purpose. So, why are you here? Coming back to your clarity statement that we talked about before, when you really recharge your metaphysical energy. It can do a lot for helping you restore the other energy spheres as well. So with Hugh, we spent a lot of time working with what restores and what drains these different energy spheres, so that way he could optimize his overall energy balance to be able to do what he wanted to do. And then finally, time management came into that.
I have a question about your bio. You said we have to accept or chronic pain. I don't know if what do you remember which part of your bio? Can you talk about this and how um let's say I know a lot of people have chronic pain. I know it's not related to what we talk here, but I'm very curious about that.
Absolutely. So myself, I do have chronic pain. I have neuropathic pain running down my left side all the time. And I also have a chronic illness and disability that showed up for me towards the end of 2018. And I went from working full time 12-hour shift work to overnight, sleeping 20 hours a day, really struggling in all aspects of my life and not feeling like myself anymore. And with this, absolutely, we need to feel the grief. We need to be able to process through that, moving through the loss of whatever that is. And with chronic pain, we still have to process that grief because we are now experiencing something that's much different than before. We have to grieve the pain free life that we lived before the pain showed up. And so once we've moved through that, if we want to continue to grow and to continue to expand beyond that space, accepting where you're at is essential. Absolutely, the past can bring through lessons and beautiful things to add to our experience. But if we want to create change, noticing and accepting where you are and saying, okay, what's next is one of the most important things we can learn how to do. I had that ingrained in me as an ICU nurse because if your patient's status changed and they started to deteriorate or decompensate, you can't get all worried about like, oh, well, what did I do before? It's really just about what's happening in this moment. What's my next step? And once you start getting into that pattern of not needing to see what the end of the tunnel looks like, but to be able to say, okay, right now it's like this. What's next? That allows you to, again, stay in that objective space, not activate the stress response, and be able to make really good decisions for yourself.
I like that because we always talk about chronic pain in my green healing show and how we can live with it or how we can improve our lifestyle to reduce the pain. Do you
Mhm.
have any last word or recommendation for people who are in this chronic pain and they are very tired of living? What can they do?
Absolutely. So, really, we as we grow up have compassion for ourselves trained out of us. So, when we're in this space of chronic pain, it's very easy for us to be like, oh, this is awful. Like, we just really ruminate on how awful it is, truly. Because if I could give my chronic pain away and it would just disappear out into the universe and nobody had to have it, I would do that in a second. Not possible yet. But for right now, learning how to train self compassion back into things is really important. So, what I recommend you do if you're listening to this or watching right now is to try a self compassion script. And so, what this is it's a three-part script that allows you to validate how you're feeling. That's step number one. And it's a thing that most people skip over. We forget to validate ourselves. The next step is to offer comfort, to remind yourself that not all days are this bad. And it's okay that you're feeling this much pain today. It's okay that you feel like you just want to crawl back into bed and pull the covers over and just sleep it off until tomorrow. There's nothing wrong with that. And then you move forward to what your plan is. So for me, when I really got sick literally overnight, I had a massive growth on my thyroid that required a lot of testing. And so one of the tests was a biopsy where somebody was sticking a very large, very painful needle into the side of my neck multiple times. And so while this was happening, I was using a self compassion script. to be like, you know what? Yes, this is very scary. There's a lot going on, and you don't know if it's cancer, you don't know if it's causing all of your symptoms. It's okay to be scared, but you can do this. You have survived 100% of the painful procedures you've been through before. You can do this. So take a moment, breathe through right now, and focus on this one breath. And then focus on this one breath. And so I kept saying those things over and over. And before I knew it, the test was over and I was all set to go. So by giving ourselves compassion back in this very structured way can do a lot for you being able to accept where you are today in this moment and be able to move forward with that chronic pain.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And you have a website becoming a very,
Yes,
that's
becomingavery.com.
yes. What is this? Is it
That's
your
right.
new book?
So my new book will also be titled Becoming Avery, and I also have another book that's in the works as well. But really, it's called Becoming Avery because my name growing up was Heather, not Avery. And so it was after about a year and a half, almost 2 years after I got really sick and so much changed, literally overnight. Like usually change happens a little bit more gradually. We're able to adapt and to move through and grow and still feel connected to the person that we were before that change. But for me, too much changed. Too much changed too quickly. And so I didn't feel connected to the person that I could be or I was before. So I decided to change my name. And when I did that, the moment I decided to change my name and I started using it, I felt at home in my body again. I felt like myself and I felt the possibility for where I could go with this rather than feeling stuck in all the loss of who I used to be.
I love it. And you have a podcast. What's your podcast name?
It's called Inner Stillness, Outer Chaos. And so it's all about trying to find that stillness despite what's all going around you. I also have one other podcast. It's called the Self Talk Pep Talk Podcast. And it's a 60-second podcast that comes out every day. So you can listen to it while you brush your teeth and get a little pep talk to start your morning.
I like that. I have to go and check it. You have Instagram account.
I do, yeah.
Becoming Avery is so easy. All of them are the same almost. And
Yes, I try and keep it easy.
yeah. All right. Thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed talking to you. I wish a lot of luck for what you're doing right now. I know you help a lot of people, and hopefully your pain also going away. Totally.
Thank you, Pentia. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
that.
Yeah. Please subscribe to Untitled Transition channel and order my book The Gap in Amazon. Thank you for watching.